And for more on this, we are now being joined live by Peter Kuznick from Washington. He is Professor of History and Director of the Nuclear Studies Institute at the American University. Dr. Kuznick, thanks so much for joining us here on the broadcast. Always a pleasure speaking with you. Now, we were speaking just days ago after the Alaska summit, and you had mentioned that there was nothing substantial that came out, and that's something a lot of analysts also felt around the world, that nothing really came out. There was a lot of pleasantries. This time around, there seems to be some decision, at least in terms of security guarantees. US has agreed. Talk to us about what this may entail and how will it be different from a NATO arrangement or Article 5, because NATO is off the table, but security guarantees are on. How do you see this unfolding?
Well, all the participants insisted on security guarantees. This is one of the major stumbling blocks. What that means that Witkoff, who doesn't always understand what's going on, has said Article 5 like security guarantees. Article 5 is the NATO doctrine that says if war starts with any of them, then they all get involved. That's what they've been avoiding. And they have talked about, Starmer, for example, has talked about sending British troops, but then said he wouldn't do it without a U.S. backstop. So if this is an Article 5 like security guarantee, and it's the equivalent for Ukraine of NATO membership, then that's not going to be, probably not acceptable to Trump's MAGA base, might not be acceptable to Donald Trump, who's been very vague about this, and certainly won't be acceptable to Putin. Putin has already rejected the idea of any NATO troops, any troops from NATO countries being on Ukrainian soil. So this is one of the things that's going to potentially blow up these negotiations, because there's no clarity. It was kept very, very vague. Now Zelensky says that they'll have something concrete to offer within the next week to 10 days. I can't imagine what that's going to be. What Russia would accept would be, I think, an international peacekeeping force. But even still, once you start talking about a force there, if it's going to be a few hundred symbolic troops there, as opposed to thousands of troops who are going to actually assist Ukraine in repelling a Russian invasion.
I hear your point.
Again, it's going to be very, very complicated to work out, because Russia has most of the cards right now. They're on the offensive militarily. And Ukraine is in a very weak position right now.
Yeah, Dr. Kuznick, let me come in there. I hear your point, sir. And the fact that there was such a looming Putin presence even in the midst of this meeting, which was clearly a panic meeting. All these European leaders, along with the UK Prime Minister, the EU chief, they're all rushing to Washington, along with the Ukrainian president. And in the middle of that meeting, there is an interruption, as Frederick Merz called it. And Trump has a 40-minute discussion with Putin over the phone while everyone else is now just waiting. Does it really put everyone in, give a clear message that it's Trump and Putin who are pretty much going to decide what goes on going forward?
Well, but it's not going to work unless there's some buy-in by Ukraine. Because even if Russia takes all of the Donbass, which it might be able to do since it's on the move, and if it takes Pokrovsk, which it has surrounded, then it can pretty much walk through most of the rest of the Donbass. But even if that happened and the war ends that way, if the Ukrainians don't accept it, there'll be guerrilla warfare, they'll be unsettled. It could lead to another outburst at any time. That's why Putin talks about getting at the root causes. What that means is dealing with the NATO question, dealing with the question of an enduring peace, and dealing with the question of land changes in the Ukraine's map. Putin seems to be somewhat willing to give some kinds of security guarantees in exchange for getting the entirety of the Donbass, which means Luhansk, that he now controls,
yes,
and Donetsk, which they only control 70% of. So, but the big issues were left unresolved today.
And Dr. Kuznick, as far as the ceasefire is concerned, Trump said that, there's no need for it. Whereas European Union, the European leaders, they want a ceasefire. There was a very visible inconsistency there even after that meeting. What was your take?
I agree with you that Trump keeps saying we don't need a ceasefire. He says he's negotiated all these other settlements while they were still fighting. And that's usually been the case historically. But Putin is not going to agree to a ceasefire. His troops are on the march. He's got the upper hand. He's not going to lose that momentum. And he's afraid that if there's a ceasefire, it's only going to be used to rearm and refortify the Ukrainians. So he's not going to accept that. And I think the Europeans know that. Even though Trump had said before Alaska that he wanted a ceasefire, after the meeting in Alaska, he was clear that it would not be a ceasefire, which is Putin's line. So again, it's great that everybody's talking about negotiations and settlements and bringing peace to Ukraine, which the world desperately needs. But we're so far from having hammered out the details that anybody can accept at this point.
Dr. Kuznik, thanks so much for joining us. Always a pleasure speaking with you and picking your brain on how this may unfold. There will be lots more to discuss. Would love to have you on the broadcast again. That was Dr. Peter Kuznik joining us from Washington.
Thank you for having me.